Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening and good evening to you. This is WeatherBrains episode number 771. It is the weekly show all about weather, the world's longest running weather podcast. We're back on Monday night. We are back on schedule here, which is very exciting. Very exciting that I had a week off last week, my first vacation time in a year almost. I needed the mental break. That was a very good thing. And thanks to everybody for helping to make it possible, including our own Bill Murray, who stood in and did a lot of blog and radio work for me during that time. But speaking of the crew, let's get them on here. Love being back on the air on Monday night. We are back in the saddle again. All right, another hurricane. Another Monday night, another hurricane. Zeta. And no, that is not the last letter of the Greek alphabet. And I probably had at least 50 people asking me today, well, we've used up the Greek letters. What's going to come next? But that's okay. I probably wouldn't know. That is certainly not my area of expertise. There's a lot of things I just don't know things about, a lot. Okay, the crew has been invited, and I think we are on the air everywhere. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is Kiss vinyl right here. Kiss! Anybody remember Kiss from the 70s and 80s? This is actual vinyl. I mean, most people have no idea what this is, although it's starting to make a comeback, I understand. Some people actually have turntables in vinyl, but our news anchor, Christopher Sine, saw these at an estate sale, and he grabbed these Kiss albums. So I've got them back here so we can play us some Kiss. All right, enough of that. I'm not going to do old song brains tonight. Busy day today, obviously with a tropical system that makes life for me about 87.2% more interesting. Very busy day, but a good day. I am refreshed and renewed. I have my soul back. Oh, Jen is here.
Hi.
Bill is here.
The gang's all here.
Yay.
I just interviewed Ari Hallmark, Jen.
Mm-hmm.
She was in a little community called Ruth, Alabama, April 27, 2011. She is now 16. She was 6 when it happened, April 27th, in her house, or in the house where she was when the tornado hit. Her parents died, her grandparents died, and a 17-month-old cousin died.
Oh my gosh.
And
James.
boy, that was a hard conversation, but a good one. I mean, she was just great. She's 16 now, and she wanted to talk. And I don't force, anybody to do this that doesn't want to. But a lot of people want to talk now that it's been 10 years. So
Right.
I'm
Wow.
collecting stories, Jen, like what y'all do. I love collecting stories.
Yeah. I know it's hard, but it's so necessary to tell these folks stories and learn.
And I think they want to. I think it's almost therapy for them now, where they didn't want to do it 9 years ago, but they want to do it now. And
Right.
So I am looking forward to trying to honor these people with some decent words. And I am not a writer like you are.
Oh goodness.
But I will. I thought about bringing in a writer, but I can't. I just can't do it. I cannot do it. I've got to do it myself.
No.
My soul's in it.
I think you'll
Bill,
you'll find it easy once you hear the stories and you start going through it. I don't think it's going to be as difficult as you think it is.
I think you're right. Yeah.
A lot of these things, ideas just flow and you let them tell the story, and then you just kind of bridge things together.
Yeah, I think that will be the case. I just want to honor them. I don't want to. Again, I write like a third grader, which.
But that's okay. You want to keep it simple.
It is. I think it is okay, and I am who I am. I'm not going to try and be some Pulitzer Prize winning writer here. I'm a physical science guy that never took a class in college about writing. It's just not what I do. But I do tell a weather story. That's what we all do. In a way, we're storytellers.
Yeah.
And so you just kind of take that skill and you build on it here. So
You remember that?
Bill, you got your pellet. I'm sorry.
Yeah, everybody notices that all of a sudden.
You got your Peloton bike. Do you have some
always
woman
been there.
screaming at you with some headphone on? Hey, boy, push that thing a little harder. You big old pansy
it's been there
boy.
the whole time, but only in the last 2 days has anybody
bald-headed
noticed
man.
it.
Old
exactly.
bald man.
Harder.
So-
faster.
Is that the way that works? I mean, is it live? I mean, do they look at you? I
Well,
mean,
it can be live. They can't see you, but you can watch a recorded class.
See the way I
Like you're
do it. I do it like with somebody screaming at me in person. This
And
there
you go. Yeah,
that's me on
that
the
works.
end, and it's the
we
same
can
kind
see.
of thing. Yeah,
And you're outdoors. That's good. That's Steve Bannon
That's
on the end. That's
awesome.
kind of good.
Oh yeah.
Oh boy.
All right, enough of that foolishness. I think we're all here. If you're not here, raise your hand.
Well, we don't have Ron Holly yet, or do we?
Yeah,
Was-
Ron is
Yeah,
on.
there he
Yeah, there
is,
he
the
is.
legend, the man, the myth, the legend. Yeah.
Wait, I saw Nate with child. We
Nate
we
with
violated
child.
some HIPAA rule or something. He immediately turned his camera off.
Yep, just me. Nobody else here but me.
Yeah, we saw that. All right, well, let's get these recorders going here, and we'll get this sucker on the road. And it keeps telling me there's a new version of Audio Hijack. We'll play with that later. They're about to unveil the new Apple operating system, I think, which I will not go to for another month. All right, here we go. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
WeatherBrains is brought to you by the great folks at Midland Weather Radio. Every home, school, and business should have a NOAA Weather Radio, the official voice of the National Weather Service.
WeatherBrains, the weekly show all about weather. This is episode number 771 for the 26th of October, 2020. You know what this is? The year that never ends. Never. It's the hurricane season that never ends.
Mm-hmm.
A new Monday, a new hurricane.
Yep.
And
Couldn't get through your whole vacation without one.
Hurricane going on when Pueblo's getting 14 inches of snow.
Yeah.
Come on.
If you're a weather weenie, it gets
Yeah.
no better than this.
Yep.
I mean,
Amazing.
and then you've got ice storm
Mhm.
warnings in Oklahoma.
Mhm.
And I saw snow in parts of Illinois and Missouri today. It is just wild. It is a smorgasbord. But Troy, you're still at 105 down there in Austin?
No, actually, we were 105 earlier today, James. Try to be accurate.
Okay. Yeah.
But we were actually peaked up at 80 about noon or so, and actually a little warmer. I think, I think 80 out at Bergstrom. And then the cold front moved in. And right now, outside, I'm looking at the MMTS, and it says 44.4 degrees. So we're down to 44 here in Austin with a little light drizzle right now. Very, very, very shallow layer of cold air. That's the whole problem with this. Very, very shallow, and upper level storm still to the west. And that simply spells an overrunning pattern for the next couple of days around here. But I'll take every bit of the rain because we are dry for the month. And so I'm happy with it. Smile.
All right. So Aubrey, are you smiling? Are the fall colors going away now? You're past your peak?
So there's so many different elevation changes that we're not exactly. So some of the lower spots in the valley still, are even just a little green. Well, I This was not ideal. So don't ever go to the Shenandoah National Park during peak foliage season on a Saturday. It's a nightmare. But our friend Cheryl Nelson was in town this past weekend, and it was just Sunday was going to be crummy. We were going to be in the 40s and wedge. So Saturday was our only day. So we went up early, and there's a lot of leaves down. There's still some very pretty spots, but with Zeta coming in on Thursday, Friday with rain and gusty winds, that's going to pretty much be it for the good stuff. So tomorrow and Wednesday will be the last really good days, because I think Zeta's going to take out a lot of that.
But let's plug your Instagram photo feed again.
Your stoop guy, James. So I was recently in the Great Smokies this past week. I was off, went down to the Great Smokies. So lots of great foliage photos and just different cool stuff. So it's WX OBS, AUBS travel. So WX OBS travel on Instagram. I've got some great photos. And of course, I throw a cool bear picture in every once in a while. She was very excited when I came home. I'll tell you that much.
I bet. It's like a Valium sandwich when you go to that feed. It's just relaxing. It's peaceful.
I try.
Show title.
Valium sandwich. I need to go there.
James, I've seen a lot of your great photos from other viewers and from across the country. You've been sharing some amazing photos. Don't forget to follow Span on Instagram also, because he's been sharing some fantastic fall photos.
Yeah, people just send them to me. And again, it's my window to the world. So Nate, how are the colors in North Carolina?
I don't know that it's a Valium sandwich, but no, they've been really nice. I think this has probably been one of the best color years we've had in a while. Some similar to West Virginia, the remnants of Zeta here later this week are going to take care of most of the peak and past peak color. And even at the highest elevations, we're past peak here. But in the sort of medium elevations, thinking, it's still along the Blue Ridge Parkway and then just a little bit below that, it still looks pretty nice. And so for folks who want to get out for the next couple of days in Western North Carolina, you still got some time, but I think after this weekend, that's pretty much going to be it.
So for those that don't watch, Nate's beard is really looking good. I mean, do you trim this thing daily? Let's discuss the grooming of this thing. I mean,
he's ready for Major
We're
League
turning
Baseball.
to Beard Brains.
Yeah.
Beard Brains is the show title.
So, just a couple times it's the shampoo and conditioner and everything, towel dry and comb it every day, and then trim it once a week just to keep it in line, and then have a professional take care of it once every 4 to 6 weeks or so. Just
so you don't get this on these other weather podcasts. You only get it on this one about how to keep your beard finely trimmed and looking good. Wow. All right.
Wow.
So Jen, what do you think about Nate's beard? Give it a 1 to 10 rating. 1 to 10. What do you say?
I give it 11. 11.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go 7. And the only it's still a little scraggly.
Ooh.
Yeah,
What?
a little scraggly, but we're
Everyone's
working
a
on it. You're
Wow.
getting there.
Wow.
this is why I like Jen, because she's honest. She's
No love in Flavortown.
That's
That's
right.
right.
What you see is what you're gonna get.
Jen, what's happening in Ohio?
It is 44 right now. I have the exact
Can
same.
you send some of that
temperature as
here? It's hot with all
Absolutely.
this hair on my
You
face.
can take it. I'm bundling up again. It's cold here. No snow here. It's just a cold rain and drizzly and all that. But we've got some rain the next couple of days, and then I think we might get a little bit of some of that tropical moisture. But it's going to be kind of a fight between that and that upper low. And so then once that moves out, I think we'll be in for a good weekend. I'm not a happy Penn State person, I will tell you. Big Ten football is back, but I would have been fine with them not playing the whole season after watching that horribleness. So
some days are good and some days aren't so good.
It
Just
was
wasn't
not
a good
good.
day for the Nittany Lions. So Bill Murray is straight off his Peloton bike.
Yeah,
Back there.
just did 45 miles on it.
No, you've never had this thing highlighted in your background like this. Is this some product
Only 'cause
placement?
of this
Is
new
this an ad
camera.
message?
Yeah, that's it. It's product placement. It's been
I
in
knew
3
it.
years.
I knew it.
3 years and nobody noticed it.
Bill
Cliff
changed his whole set here.
For
No,
what
I
they
just
pay, what
changed
you guys pay for those
cameras.
Peloton bikes, you ought to get paid big time for that.
No, I got in.
Real product placement.
Yeah, we got it. I got in early when they were cheap, Nate. 3 years ago. Now they're like
They've never been
like,
cheap.
well, yeah, I tell you, the darn thing is worth every penny, though. To get up and be able to be on the darn thing within 5 minutes instead of having to drive to the gym and
So I don't know how this thing works. Is there a camera? Is somebody looking at you when you get on
No.
that thing and
I
screaming at
hope
you,
not.
or how does this work?
No, I'm generally doing a recorded one, James, from some 2 or 3 days ago, something like that. You can do a
That's
live one.
Well, so you can sit there and goof off and do nothing, and that nobody would yell at you.
No, because it keeps up with you. It knows, it's constantly tracking your output.
Plus, if you're
Next
paying that
week-
much money, who would
basically-
goof off?
You're
Next
basically
week,
competing
I
against
want-
yourself.
Next week, I want Bill Murray on the Peloton, start to finish. On
we
next
can
week's
arrange
episode.
that.
It'd be our
Yeah,
intro.
It'll
Yeah.
be a little hard to do the questions with that.
Well, Bill, before they hang up on us and run, please bring
They
in our
probably
guests.
already have,
Yeah.
So tonight's guest, WeatherBrain number 1, is a meteorologist and a sounding solution manager at Vaisala, Chris Vagaski. I didn't even say it right. After I got him to do it for me, Vagaski. Welcome to
There you go,
WeatherBrains.
Bill.
Yeah, there you go. So today you got a little snow in Colorado, which is really
A
good
little.
news.
Oh, more than a little. I've got enough to do snow angels on my deck in the backyard. So
But the more the merrier, given the last few weeks of what's been going on there, Chris.
it has been nasty. A couple of weeks ago, we were within 6 miles of mandatory evacuation for Cameron Peak fire, so we had the truck all loaded up, ready to go. But luckily, the wind shifted, and now 15 to 20 inches of snow on top of those fires will hopefully help the firefighters get back on the offensive.
Talk about the fires in Rocky Mountain National Park, because a lot of us have been there, of course, and
Yeah,
love those places and just are heartbroken to see the news.
it's really heartbreaking to see that. Seeing the snow in Estes Park today actually really good news. But it's now the East Troublesome Fire, real appropriate name. That's been burning through Rocky Mountain past few days. Got extremely close to Estes Park, but hopefully that heavy snow helps squelch the fires just a little bit. And already thinking about what's going to happen after we get the fires put out, and maybe go through and get up there to do some volunteer work to help clean up the park.
Well, it's a beautiful, beautiful place. We're sure glad you're here tonight. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Bill.
And your compatriot tonight is a legend in lightning. He's a meteorologist at Vaisala also. Ron Holly, welcome to the show. Ron, have you been on the show before? I couldn't remember whether you had or
No,
not.
everything I know is what I've heard from Chris. So.
Oh Lord, that's terrible.
Oh,
But you
boy.
came anyway, so thank you.
There's no hope.
Yeah. but having known you for a long time, at least a little bit, Ron, you're just basically a legend in this field. So we're really honored to have you here tonight. So, but when I think about Vaisala, I think about lightning, but it's much more than that. So why don't you start, and Chris, you jump in where you need to, talk about the company itself for a minute.
Well, yeah, I just became an actual employee a few months ago. I was a part-time contractor for 18 years, the longest job interview I've ever had. So
try it before you buy it, huh, Ron?
Yeah, right. So I'm primarily working in the lightning area. I saw last week, Chris, there's 1,650 employees, or 1,700 now around the world. Yeah. And they just keep buying various companies around the world to fit certain niches. I guess the one thing is that it's high quality, and also is not person to person. It's not meant for the consumer. It's meant for governments and airlines and a lot of large agencies like that. So it's always a challenge for us to reach out into the actual community of the people that work and use the data.
Yeah, and that was speaking of Zeta earlier. I mean, the hurricane hunters are flying through the storm right now, dropping dropsondes. They've dropped thousands of dropsondes this year in this horrible hurricane season. Those dropsondes, so if you've ever seen a weather balloon or familiar with the weather balloon, just think of a dropsonde as a weather balloon in reverse. They just open a chute in the airplane and drop these sensors out. to measure the conditions in the hurricane. Those are all built here in Colorado, just down the hallway from where I work.
And the company actually started in soundings, didn't it, Chris? The original founder.
Yeah.
Talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, Dr. Vilho Weissela, he was one of the proponents of upper air measurements back in the 1930s. So back in 1936, he got his start in selling radiosondes. His first radiosonde order was actually to Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Sold a box of radiosondes in an airplane hangar in Massachusetts with the rain pouring down, and that's been going on ever since then, getting smaller, lighter, faster, better. So built on ballooning is what I always like to say, but we've really expanded to cover all sorts of weather measurements.
Talk about the history of radiosondes in the Weather Service in the United States and around the world too, but in the United States. When did they become a fixture, in our weather observation systems?
Yeah, I actually gave a presentation at the AMS meeting back in January of this year, which feels like 5 years ago now. and that's actually what it was. It was a 100-year look at radiosondes around the world. They really started to get going with radiosondes back in the 1920s, 1930s. But I found some stations, including the Denver station, that has been around for as long as AMS has been around, so for over 100 years. So twice a day, every day now, all around the world, around 800 to 900 radiosondes at 12Z and 0Z are being flown to give us a snapshot of the weather conditions from the surface all the way to the stratosphere, based on those small little sensors, no bigger than my can of Dr. Pepper here, that are measuring wind speed, wind direction, humidity, pressure, and temperature. So we get a good snapshot of all the weather patterns around the world twice a day, just with these weather balloons.
Do you think any other technology is going to ever usurp them in any way? How many centuries or decades will it be before that happens with satellites and all the technology that's coming along?
The nice thing about radiosondes is it provides you that true in situ measurement. You've got that sensor flying right through that atmosphere, so it provides the ground truth to what the satellite may be interpreting, or different ground-based remote sensing may be. So I don't think radiosondes are going to be going away anytime soon until you can come up with something that replaces that actual in situ measurement.
And so we've heard a lot about aircraft measurements and things like that, but they have limitations too. And they've become important in the last few years. But talk about those for a second. Yeah,
there was a big story when flights first started getting canceled this year because of COVID. Was what are we going to do without the airline measurements? You get a good profile as the aircraft takes off, but then you're at cruising altitude for temperature and humidity. You don't get that full atmospheric profile, but that does give a lot of good information of the jet stream conditions and things like that. So there's a lot of different measurements out there, and they all go hand in hand to help feed those models and put out a good estimate of what the weather's going to do.
Well, we're lucky to have both of you here tonight. So I should have given you both a buzzer. Y'all decide how y'all want to answer a lot of these questions tonight, and all the panelists are going to jump in too. But we're real lucky to have you here because lightning is important to each and every one of us. But I know lightning fatalities are down this year, which is good news. Talk about that for a minute. What's caused that reduction, you think? And, that seems counterintuitive in most ways, but why do you think that is?
Ron, you want to take first crack at it?
Well, the numbers have been going down for decades. In the early part of the 20th century, it was in the, 450, I think, 1 year?
Yeah.
Something like that. And the population was 1/3 of what it is now, something like that. So the rate is way down. The same thing is happening in Western Europe, Canada, Japan, Australia. So it's more of a lifestyle thing on the longer term situation where people frankly, are spending too much time inside and not watching the clouds outside. So they should be outside looking at things. So anyway, people are inside. Buildings are equipped with wiring and plumbing, and people also have vehicles available. So you have a vehicle or a substantial building within range of you 99% of the time of your life. And so we have it pretty easy in terms of lightning safety. And the only deaths and injuries that we're having are people who obviously were not in those two situations, fully enclosed metal top vehicle or a large substantial building, and they chose or at least ended up in that situation in recreation or in perhaps a job situation and so on, roofers and gardeners and so on. So Chris and I have talked about this, a number of us have on the National Lightning Safety Council, that we may be down to virtually the irreducible lowest number. I mean, I just don't see how we can get much less than this. I'm amazed that it's this low.
What is this magic number right now that we're at this year? Where are we at for 2020?
So we're at 15 this year. The record low that we've recorded is 16. That was back in 2017. So we're trending in the right direction, but it's something that on the National Lightning Safety Council, we're always trying to see what we can do to even see if we can get that down any further. But at a certain point, you're still going to have people that are out working outside, as Ron said, roofers, gardeners, things like that. Even just people being unlucky as you're getting out of the car and you get struck as you open the car door. So it may be difficult to get down to that wonderful number of 0, but that's the effort that we're putting together.
Well, the real effort is
Chris and Ron, Troy here. In a way, are you saying, Ron, that we may be just a little bit lucky in all this?
Well, we've done an awful lot of education.
Yeah.
But we've also have a lifestyle that makes us more safe from lightning in this case.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to mention, though, is that education, we feel, is part of the answer. Lightning detection data have made us much more aware of what's going on. Medicine has helped. We need to keep educating because there's new people entering into the workforce and born every year. And so, it isn't the same people for the rest of our lives. It's something that we have to keep doing and keep adjusting the message for different people and different technologies.
Is it becoming sort of random now, or are there still certain states, certain seasons? You mentioned roofers and gardeners and other occupations. Talk about the circumstances that are still more problematic.
Yeah, the summertime months are typically the peak months for lightning injuries, lightning fatalities. That to have those, you have to have the lightning, and that's when the lightning occurs. We get lightning fatalities in every state. Montana had one this year. California's had them in the past. But if you co-locate places where people do a lot of things outdoors and where there's a lot of lightning, those are tending to be your highest states for lightning injuries, lightning deaths. So your Floridas, Texases, Colorados, things like that.
One thing we've found in the last few years is, John Jensenius used to be with the Weather Service, is keeping up the data, is that fishing and boating is probably the single biggest category in the recent 5 years, 10 years. And those are highly exposed situations. No real solutions.
Yeah, and that makes sense. So talk about some of the outreach. I know y'all mentioned a group that you're involved in, but what are some of the most important outreach things right now that are trying to lower those numbers even further?
Chris, go ahead.
Well, every week every year we have the National Lightning Safety Awareness Week, so that's the last full week of June. And again, that's a lot on outreach and providing education and really talking about what you can do to be lightning safe in different situations, whether it's at home or at the office, whether you're doing things outside or things like that. So that's really the big one, is getting out the message of when thunder roars, go indoors. Or if you see a flash, dash inside, which the National Weather Service worked on to put together after they were at a spotter training course, and some deaf and hard of hearing people said, well, what do I do? I can't hear thunder, so what do I do in that situation? And they came up with the see a flash, dash inside. So that's one of the big things that is always being worked on, is just making sure that broadcast meteorologists, both English speaking and Spanish speaking, are really familiar with how to educate the population and the public on what to do when thunder and lightning are around.
So if roofing companies or roofers are especially vulnerable, and I could see why that would be, how are we reaching out to them to talk to contractors and folks to make sure? Because I know those crews want to get done with the roof as fast as they can. They're racing the clock, especially if a storm's approaching, and they're probably working to the last minute. So that puts them in a really difficult and precarious situation.
A couple of things there. One is that, to be honest, most of the roofers and landscapers are Hispanic, and so as the National Lightning Safety Council has, in the last couple of months, we've started deliberately going toward outreach to the TV stations and the other media. And the other one is that many or most of these people are self-employed, small group. There's no big company. OSHA doesn't handle these sorts of things. And so these are difficult situations to get around. There's just no way around it.
And so OSHA doesn't handle it because it's not corporate or not companies that are doing it? Is that why, Ron?
I'm not real familiar with it, but OSHA generally doesn't get into lightning. That's one of the problems with lightning in the U.S. anyway, is that 90 to 95% of the events are a single person. So it's pretty tough to come up with organized rules and regulations that are probably not going to be followed, to be honest.
I know you guys are the leaders probably in the world, I guess, in detection. Talk about that detection process, what's involved in it, and how that's getting to people in the field now in terms of apps and different uses that they can use to protect themselves.
Ron, you've been at it for 18 years with Vizsla, back before it was even Vizsla, it was Global Atmospherics. But lightning detection really kind of got started 40, 50 years ago now, based on the electromagnetic radio waves that lightning produces when it strikes. And a big push at understanding lightning detection was actually for space agencies, when rockets or shuttles get struck. So you put Cape Canaveral there on the east coast of Florida, which is one of the most lightning prone areas in the country, and you've got thousands of gallons of rocket fuel. You don't want to be sitting on the top of that when lightning strikes. So that really got an emphasis on understanding how to detect lightning. And Ron, you worked way back when it was first getting going on some of these experiments to first start detecting it.
Yeah, I was with NOAA. I was in the severe storms lab and other labs for Boulder and Norman. And the lightning detection came along in the late 70s at the University of Arizona here in Tucson. And that's why I'm here in Tucson, is because the office was established here. And the company grew. I was talking to Phil Kreider, who's one of the great fathers of lightning in this country. He said, as soon as a group of us invented the technology, the Bureau of Land Management in Alaska said, we want this. And he said, I was starting to build this stuff in my office. I can't run a national or international scale business out of my office at the university. So they formed a company, and it went on from there.
So talk about that process, Ron, that's used to detect lightning. Talk about how that's done.
Well, lightning emits in all frequencies. It turns out that there's especially good frequency in the LF, VLF range, that the signal travels quite a long ways and it's relatively easy to pick up with a good antenna. And so that's why we only have 100 or so antennas in the US, and we're picking up lightning with location accuracy down to 150 meters now. That's the median accuracy. And we're picking up 90 to 95% of all cloud to ground flashes, more like 95%. So when lightning occurs, it emits electromagnetic signal. The sensors, this is the invention from the University of Arizona, the sensors are looking for a very specific signal from lightning. And I'm working on a project anyway. I heard from Phil Kreider relatively recently that in the early days, they were having the antennas fooled that the signal from a Xerox machine was imitating the same thing as a lightning flash. And he said, we could not figure out why we're getting lightning on our system when there wasn't any lightning around. So anyway, the antennas are waiting out there in the field. When lightning occurs, it gives the angle and most importantly, the GPS clock time to the microsecond. And so you do all that wonderful spherical trig that I know all of us remember, that you work backwards from there and then you can calculate the position.
And talk about the physical processes that cause lightning, and for a minute, just to bring any of our listeners that are not familiar with that process up to speed with what's really going on in a storm when that happens.
Your turn, Chris.
All right. Well, yeah. You have to remember that lightning is a big electrical spark in the atmosphere. So I'm getting to the season now here in Colorado that just walking around on the carpet and touching a light switch will give me a pretty good jolt. That's kind of what's happening in the atmosphere. You have an updraft or the thunderstorm developing out off to the distance. You see the cloud starting to tower, starting to build, and in that cloud are water droplets and ice crystals and graupel. And graupel is the little pellets that are kind of like Dippin' Dots, and as they're colliding, they're trading electrons with each other, and you get a particle with an additional electron. It's a little heavier, it'll sink. Particles with less electrons will start to rise in the updraft, and you get that charge separation. So you get positive charges and negative charges. And when those charges get large enough, then you start getting those much bigger sparks than just a static shock in your house. But as you start getting those shocks, that's the process of lightning. And
that starts with a leader, is that right, Chris? Or how does that physically evolve?
It can depend on whether you're talking in cloud or cloud to ground. The cloud to ground process has the step leader that's coming down, and it's coming down at hundreds of thousands of miles an hour in 30 to 40 meter increments, and it's doing this in just the blink of an eye. And as it starts getting close to the ground, you get the upward streamers that are reaching up towards the step leader that's coming down. And when the leader and the streamer make that connection, that's when you get that real bright flash that you see as lightning. And that all happens in just microseconds to milliseconds.
And we've seen some impressive, and you've shared them on your different feeds, the lightning safety group that you're part of. There's some pretty impressive lightning videos that are out there that are quite scary.
Yeah, a couple of things. One is that the high-speed videos are coming along that we have the privilege of seeing sometimes. What are they up to? 100,000 frames per second now?
Yeah.
And every time people increase the speed, we see things that we don't know what they are. Because, well, okay, now what is that? Because there's phenomena going on at these incredibly fast scales, which help us understand, but at first we don't know what they are. The other one is, from a lightning safety point of view, when the downward leader is coming down, as Chris said, between 30 and 40 or 30 and 50 meters from the ground, that's when it decides what it's going to hit. It doesn't know about a hill a mile away or a tower 500 feet away. It has no idea that's over there. So it only is doing a search radius down at the very lowest tip of that last 30 to 50 meter step leader. And so that's why it's really difficult to anticipate what it's going to hit.
Is that when you get the traditional, the frightening image of someone with their hair standing on end? Ron, we don't
Well,
have that problem, obviously, but
Well,
at least some of us
there
on
we
this
go.
panel, James.
boy, I don't know, 3 out of 6 here. All right. Chris will win that. So anyway, the hair standing on end is actually upward leaders reaching up there. The cloud aloft is reaching down and sort of like a magnet saying, hit me. Hit the things that are reaching up saying, hit me. And whatever is within that 30 to 40 meter radius is tall and isolated and pointed is what's going to be hit. So it's that whole last process is where the high-speed videos have come in really handy.
So what are some of the funky things that you've observed in the last few years that high-speed video has allowed you to see for the first time that you finally were able to determine an explanation for?
Chris, you have anything? Or
I haven't talked to anybody, any of our friends that do the high speed video recently. I don't know if you remember anything from our last meeting with them.
Yeah, what the most interesting thing is that you can have a tower and it's putting up this upward leader and the downward leader, step leader is coming down, and we actually have some videos where the two connect. I think there's only 2 of them so far. And it really is working that way, and that's kind of reassuring. So it's good to see.
So Chris and Ron, this is the question that in out here that we hear about lightning all the time. So does lightning, Chris and Ron, come from up above, or does it come from down below? Does it come from the cloud? Does it come from the ground, or is the answer yes?
It all originates up in the sub-freezing cloud layer and comes down. The light goes up the channel, and that's what's confusing. But the video is very clear that it's coming down. And then once that connection is made, then the light roars up the channel real fast. And all that's so fast you can't see it anyway. So.
But the harmful part is coming down from the cloud. Is that right? Or is the harmful part to someone what's coming up from the ground?
Well, you need to make the connection. A person being on the ground at the surface is the one that makes the connection if that happens.
Ron and Chris, can you talk a little bit about what we hear increasingly about novices out here, about that positive strike, because those are the ones we hear are most deadly from what we hear. And are we learning more about those? And I see Ron maybe not agreeing with that completely, and that's great. That's what we're here to learn. So,
Chris, we've been through this a lot of times recently.
Yeah,
so.
It's one of those things that I think started kind of in the forestry and the fire side of things. People thinking, okay, the positives are the ones that are causing all the damage and all the destruction and things like that. But when you think about it, positive lightning is 5 to 10% of the typical cloud to ground lightning. So it makes up a lot lower percentage. You have a lot more 95% negatives. So there's a lot more potential for negatives to cause damage or to hit things. Ron, do you want to talk about some of the characteristics current-wise with negatives and positives?
Yeah. Well, what happened was in the forestry people, Don Latham, some of you may know Crazy Don from New Mexico Tech, Missoula. He did some studies that showed that positive cloud to grounds had long continuing current or continuing current. And that's true. However, it turns out that negatives also have continuing current, but there's 20 times as many negatives. And even though the ratio is lower for the negatives, there's actually a lot more continuing current with negatives than there are with positives. Mm-hmm. And so this is a almost a folk tale we're trying to unravel at this point, because it's really not true. It's overemphasized. Let's put it that way. And it's kind of frustrating.
If someone is struck by lightning, Ron and Chris, is there anything? I mean, obviously you're not having a good day if you're struck by lightning, so we'll get that out of the way. Number two, is there more, I guess, more deaths involved with someone necessarily struck by a positive strike?
We don't know.
Okay.
Two things. One is, and this is it, I'm going into my lecture mode. 3 to 5% of all lightning deaths and injuries occur from direct strike, where it comes down. 95 to 97% of the time, it is not a direct strike. So put that aside. That's not the real issue. It's more than half the time, or at least half the time, it's ground current. It hits somewhere nearby and then travels across. So anyway, yeah. So the situation is that it doesn't really matter which kind it is, whether it's positive or negative. If it strikes close enough to you, you can have ground current, and that can be very dangerous. Or you can have direct contact, or you can have side flash, or upward leaders.
Is there any safety against that ground current, Ron?
If you're inside of a substantial building or a fully enclosed metal,
but if you're just out alone and isolated, is there any
Nothing.
protection against that?
Nothing.
Wow.
No, there's nothing you can do against any of these outside. And
So
we need to stop that discussion.
So crouching down, all these myths,
That's
things
the
that
worst,
were lightning safety
worst
rules,
possible recommendation. It's irrelevant.
those need to be stricken from every lightning safety rule
We have.
in the world. Like being in the southwestern corner of the house or opening windows during a tornado or anything like that, huh?
Yeah.
So what do you say? Just run to like a building?
Run to your safe place. 99.9% of our time and space, we're within quick reach of a safe building or a safe vehicle.
But talk about what is an okay structure, a bad structure, and what's a good structure for a minute, because I know there's a difference there between like a golf shelter or a picnic pavilion, and those are not acceptable.
Yeah, that's something that we're really trying to work on the education side as well, because this year there have been people that have been killed thinking they're taking shelter when all they've really done is just preventing themselves from getting wet. So when you think of a good place to be, a safe place to be, it's a substantial building, and we've said substantial building a lot. And what that is a house, a store, something that has plumbing and electrical in the walls, four walls and a roof. So you need to be fully enclosed. And then if you don't have that, a metal topped car. It's not the tires that are protecting you. A lot of people think it's kind of the tires that are protecting you. It's the metal shell around you. So those are the safe places. And if you're not in one of those, you can't guarantee your safety.
Let's talk football. Anybody want to talk football here? Let's talk football.
Oh, this is the exciting part.
I do a little weather support for some college football teams, and a lot of Nate does support for college football. Troy does support for college football. So typically we adhere by the Southeastern Conference rule, at least where I am, which is 8 miles. Good, bad? What's your thought on the 8 mile SEC rule?
It's pretty good.
Well, there you go. So what happens is that, there's an announcement made and you're asking people to go into the concourse area. I would assume that has to help, right? Instead of sitting out in the stands. And the football players go in the tunnel. And and again, I get calls all the time from Little League coaches. They run Little League ballparks. They've got 8, 9, 10-year-olds out there. They obviously you could sell them some good equipment, but they might not have that good equipment. What's your advice for them?
Cars are right nearby. Go to the cars. Don't go to the concession stand.
But when they don't have any equipment, all they've got is a phone.
If you hear thunder, the discussion is done.
Okay, so that simply hear thunder.
That would be the easiest way to go.
Yeah, and that's what I'm glad you're saying that, because that's what I tell people when you hear thunder, get in. Forget the 8 mile rule. So, do you guys have an app, a phone app that people can use? Because some people do need a little more detailed information out in the field.
Yeah, no, we don't have an app. Our data is in use by some large weather organizations that do provide that data to the public through their apps.
Yeah, and I would assume that it feeds most of these TV station apps, like the one we have here, because you can set rings on most of these apps. But that's so. Here's another one, guys. You guys ever been to a NASCAR race?
I've not, but I have run on a NASCAR track.
Okay. So just down the street here, I've got, back during the glory days of NASCAR, and I don't know how many people come to these things now with COVID and everything else, but I'd have 200,000 people in the stands at Talladega. And, how do you handle that, guys? Well, what's your advice for the folks that put on those races?
There's no easy solution. There was a case, when was it, Chris? About 3 years ago, the Miami Dolphins had a game, or Jacksonville, and
one of the Florida teams.
NFL game, and they stopped the game or canceled it, and people went to their cars, and somebody was seriously injured. I don't think was killed in the parking lot. So those are what we call long lead time situations, really long lead times, and there's no easy solution to that.
And I guess the worst case, and I'll stop my sports rant here in a minute, is golf. And I don't know anything about golf. I watched the movie Caddyshack, and that's all I know. The only courses I play, the only courses, yeah, I do. I mean, Judge Schmales and I would be a great partner on the course. the only courses I play have windmills. Yeah. The only courses I played have windmills and pirate ships. I know nothing about golf, but to me, out of all of the sporting events, I've seen more lightning issues with these golf matches than anything else. Horrifying scenes with these. Have you guys got any thoughts on maybe upgrading safety precautions for the PGA and the LPGA and all these people?
Yeah, just last year there was the lightning strike at the PGA Championship in Georgia. Yep. That hit a tree, and the tree splintered and injured a bunch of people. And again, it's all a matter of getting that good solid plan in place, and when lightning is detected, or you hear thunder, you see the lightning, there is no more discussion. It's all right, this is over, and it's time to head in. It really feels to me, and going back to your college football discussion, I remember a Michigan State football game where the fans weren't leaving the stadium, and it took Tom Izzo coming down onto the field and saying, "Okay, guys, I need you to get out of the seats and get somewhere safe because the storm is moving in. And when it's safe to come back out, if you guys leave, I'm going to sit right there with you." So you got to have a Hall of Fame basketball coach sitting with you. So sometimes it takes a little bit of incentive to get people to take the appropriate action, but maybe the best incentive is you're not going to get struck.
Well, one thing with golf is that I think we've had a success story there in the 60s and 70s and 80s. There were a lot of cases of individuals at private golf courses killed and injured. It was one of the top categories. It's now almost off the bottom of the scale because people are taking precautions. So
well, more people hold up one irons right now, like Lee Trevino told them, right? Because even God can't hit a one iron, right?
I've heard that once or twice.
There's a reason I've got one in my bag.
So let's go back there to the question of where do people go? And there's where you need to have the evacuation time evaluated. How long does it take to get to a safe place? And in the lightning safety community, we have a word which is absolutely forbidden to be used. Forbidden. And that's called shelter. Because when you hear the word shelter, you think of rain shelter, bus shelter, golf shelter, sun shelter, beach shelter. They're all designed, picnic shelter, they're designed to keep you dry and out of the sun. They're not designed for lightning. 99% of them are not safe. And I don't know what they've done in the golf courses. Perhaps they've even removed them. But that was where quite a few of the cases were happening, because people said, well, I'll just run over there and get dry. And it was not safe. And we actually had 2 deaths this summer, was it, Chris, from children went into the shelters on trails. I remember the one anyway.
I got one more while I got you guys on the line here. That I hear this one all the time. Is it safe to take a shower or a bath in my home during a thunderstorm? How would you respond to that?
It is a little bit dangerous to be doing that. Lightning can travel through the ground, and if it's traveling through the ground and it hits metal pipe, hits any water that's coming in, then it can come into your hot water tank, into your pipes leading to your shower, strike you in the shower, doing dishes, doing anything connected to water or electricity in the house. I'm sitting on my laptop here, I've got it plugged in. When lightning comes around, I pull that plug out.
There is a death from wiring or plumbing inside of a house about every 10 years in the U.S.
Ron and Chris, a couple of years, I'll make everyone real uncomfortable now.
Good.
In Williamson County, north of Austin, a law enforcement officer had worked most of the day, a motorcycle officer, got off of the shift and went home and decided to go sit in the library for just a little bit, and was knocked across the room by a bolt of lightning coming up out of the toilet as he sat there. And his wife found him. Yeah, his wife found him. That man is actually still alive today. He survived that lightning strike. But man, when you got to go, I guess,
Well, I'd like to turn the discussion to a fairly serious situation here. I'm working with the African Centers for Lightning and Electromagnetics, ACLE-NET. And we are working with mainly in Uganda these days. And their schools there are made out of mud brick. They have no wiring and they have no plumbing. And so there's an average of 2 to 3 events a year where at least 5 kids are killed inside of a classroom during class. And 4 weeks ago, in northwestern Uganda, some boys between about 9 and 13 were out playing a pickup soccer game, and the rain came, and they went underneath the veranda of a thatched roofed hut, and 10 of them were killed. So these are all very real things, and because they don't have a safe building and they don't have a safe vehicle, there is no such thing. So many people in the world do not have the luxury or the access to the things that we have to make us lightning safe. So let's put it in perspective that way.
And talk about I'm sorry, Nate, you had a question. Nate,
go ahead.
Well, this will relate to that for a second, but talk about the actions that bystanders would take if they had someone in their midst that was struck by lightning. What first aid actions are important in that case?
I mean, here in the United States, immediately call 911 and get medical aid on the way. People who are struck, they don't have an electric charge still in them, so you can administer first aid to them right away if you know first aid. I mean, if you don't, when you're on the phone with 911, they can walk you through CPR or some different first aid things. But get medical attention right away for that person.
And then one last thing before you go, Nate, talk about the long-term effects that someone who's struck by lightning may have to go through.
Well, I've been going off and on to the Lightning Strike and Electric Shock Survivors International, ESSI. And it's not a really happy group. There's people there with lifelong disabilities, with memory loss, multitasking, walking, thinking, just first level things, and they can't hold a job and so on. So not everybody has that happen. We don't want to overdo it, but there is enough of a percentage of them that there's a whole group of hundreds of people that get together every year. So it's a neurological damage. It's to the brain and nervous system. So that makes it really difficult to diagnose. Burns don't really matter. You can't really see, seeing or not seeing burns doesn't really matter. So it's a neurological problem, and it's a tough one to treat. You can only treat the symptoms. There's no underlying problem. Anyway, I work with a medical doctor, Dr. Mary Ann Cooper. Some of you know. She and I wrote a book a couple years ago on lightning, mostly for the developing countries. So I learned a lot because she wrote all the medical stuff.
I want to pivot back to the data for a minute. And you mentioned a lot of the Visela data, and there are a couple other providers now that do lightning data. And a lot of people are using it in apps. Some, just as hey, there's this thing coming. Some folks are using it more in an operational setting. They may be, getting a feed directly from one of the big vendors and using that for event safety and that sort of thing. And Chris, you and I've had a chat a little bit about this previously. What do we not know? I mean, what's the stuff that should be obvious or maybe isn't obvious that we need to know in order to not, frankly, get ourselves into a bad spot because we're looking at this map and it's actually not showing us what we think it's showing us?
Yeah, that's one of the things I really like to talk with people about is what do the dots on my map mean? And one of the really important things to know is, do you have the cloud lightning data available in your feed? Most feeds are only showing you what's happening between the cloud and the ground, which that's important information to have because that's what's going to strike a building, what have you. But most of the lightning is in the cloud, and it primarily begins in the cloud. 99.9% kind of begins in the cloud. So having the cloud data, knowing when a cloud gets electrified, because you start seeing the in-cloud lightning, is critical to having even a more advanced warning than just seeing the first cloud to ground stroke, because it can be several minutes between the cloud getting electrified and then you actually getting lightning on the ground.
Which feeds include the in-cloud lightning? Is that something, in terms like commercially available? Do you know who's reselling that, or how we'd be able to tell?
Yeah, it would. Most apps are going to only show the cloud to ground, so it would have to be a specialized feed where you specifically asked for the cloud lightning information.
And about how many of those in-cloud events turn into cloud to ground events? Is there a 30%, 60%, 90% that you mentioned that most 99% of these cloud to ground strikes start sort of within cloud activity? Is there a fraction, like if you're looking at this operationally, is there a I've got in cloud activity, storms growing, that means I'm 50% likely to have a cloud to ground strike in X minutes, or what are those numbers typically?
And Ron, I'll let you take that based on the expression you made.
Yeah, we don't want you to get too comfortable here on WeatherBrains.
That's one of the tough things with lightning, is that it's not orderly. It doesn't just creep along and go like this and keep coming at you. We've done a lot of studies and show that it's relatively random within a storm. It jumps ahead, to the side, back, ahead, back, ahead. And so you don't have a linear situation like that. And so that's why we end up with, unfortunately, these rather large radius, 8 miles, 6 miles, whatever you have, because we don't know where the next one's going to be. And so as soon as it's within some range that you've decided in advance, then you just say that's close enough. I don't know where the next one's going to be. One other thing, Chris, what's the ratio, the number of cloud detections we have to cloud to grounds? It's 3 to 5, 5 to 1, something.
Yeah, it's 5 to 8 to 1, depending on the storm.
Yeah. So there's a lot of cloud lightning, and it does help you get a better image of the whole package of lightning that's in the area there. But I guess my phrase is, you don't want to try to outguess it. You just say it's close enough, we're done, and that's where you get the inconvenience and the
Yeah.
people taking risks and saying, I got away with it the last 17 times, and the 18th time we'll do it. So
yeah, you mentioned the 8 mile rule and whatnot, and our, at least at NC State, I can't speak for everybody else, but our sort of approach is, we like to, if we see something coming, like if we see something off to the west and it's moving to the east, we will time it so that we have everybody out of the stadium bowl and in their cars, or we have a basketball arena that's right next door, have them out before we have the first strike within the 8 mile radius. Can't get that all the time, obviously. We've had a couple of events where we had one event first year I was doing this where the first strike of the day was inside our 8 mile bubble. And that's a day where I think that, the in-cloud lightning would have been nice. Thankfully for us, it was before the event. Gates hadn't opened yet. People had started to, form lines. And so, folks in their cars just, tailgating, just went back into their cars. And that was probably the best place for them given what we got. But, that's the kind of stuff that keeps me up at night when I'm, sitting there in the hot seat. And we've got convection, bubbling up around for the day. Don't know that we're gonna have to worry about that so much for the rest of the season, just because of, it's heading into a cool season now. But, it's good information.
Yeah.
So I have a couple of questions. First of all, this is a great discussion, and I teach a class for special needs. It's an adults with disabilities class, and we do it over Zoom. And I had never heard of the See a Flash, Dash Inside. I've heard the When Thunder Roars Go Indoors, but I hadn't heard the other one. So thank you for that, because we have hearing impaired who are a part of the Zoom class. So I'm going to be teaching that tomorrow for sure. And my first question is, are there some other educational resources that teachers like myself or others that could go to maybe teach lightning classes and about how lightning works and lightning safety? I know the National Weather Service has a great curriculum, but I didn't know if you guys had any other recommendations for classes.
Yeah, I don't know. You're familiar with the weather.gov/lightning. That's a really comprehensive. And then National Lightning Safety Council at lightningsafetycouncil.org. We have a lot of educational material and information there as well. Ron, you've been doing a lot of educational outreach in your time too.
Well, we've been pointing people in Africa to these two websites. So, and actually some of it's been translated in Swahili. If you need that, I've got that. So,
That's
and
neat.
I also have a little booklet. I forgot about this. Chris, can you put that on the chat?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I'll pull up the book.
We did a little booklet about 3 years ago with a PhD student there at the University of Arizona, and we made a lot of short one-pagers. It's kind of fun. So
That's awesome. The one question they always ask me whenever I do a lightning class, Miss Jennifer, what is heat lightning? So I'm going to just have you guys go ahead and define it. What is heat lightning for everybody?
Better yet, what is heat lightening? That's even better.
I have excellent lighting above me tonight.
we had a conference last year scheduled for ISLA earlier this year, International Lightning Detection Conference, and we got an abstract from China for somebody who was describing lighting in a museum cabinet. Lighting. That was a first.
I made it, though I did make a joke about heat lightning earlier this year, or late last year, because in the AMS glossary, there is a listing for heat thunder. And if you have thunder, you've obviously got lightning. So if there's heat thunder, then there must be heat lightning. But in all seriousness, heat lightning is just the lightning that's off in the distance that is too far away to hear the thunder. 8 to 10 miles, 10 miles on a very good day to hear the thunder. So if it's beyond that 8 to 10 miles, then it's just, you're not hearing the thunder, you're just seeing the lightning off in the distance. Earth's curvature helps with that. So you can see lightning 40, 50, 60 miles away.
Yeah, that's the point I was going to make for those of you doing the football games. Seeing lightning here in Arizona, we see lightning. That picture I have behind me was taken from my house. That lightning is at least 30 miles 20 to 30 miles away. We can see lightning 80 miles away here pretty commonly. So that's obviously not a danger. So you do have to make some sort of qualitative judgment about how far away it is.
Talk about your photography for a little bit, Ron. You've done some great photography over the years.
Well, I've been taking photographs of all sorts of weather for many years, and I have some good lightning pictures. There is a lot of growth in the area of lightning photography by really good people who have enormously better time availability and equipment than I have. So I don't think I can ever match what's going on these days, but there's some fantastic stuff out there.
Have y'all gotten into sprites and jets and all those sorts of things? We had two of the world's experts on a few weeks ago about that. Have y'all looked at those very much?
Well, I've just in the last week have connected up with, if you're going to look him up, Frankie Lucena, Lucena in Puerto Rico, is a freelance lightning meteor photographer on the coast of Puerto Rico. And I just corresponded with him today, and he's seeing lightning over South America from Puerto Rico. The sprites off the top of the MCSs over Puerto Rico. So yeah, that's a whole separate category. It doesn't show up in the lightning data as such because it's the high atmosphere phenomenon.
And talk about.
Let me ask you a question.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, Bill, I was barging in
go
here.
ahead. No.
All these things come into my mind while you guys are here because I get all these questions.
Right.
And I don't have the answers. So often, just an average person, not a high-powered lawyer, an attorney working some big case, but just, a guy or a housewife or somebody needs to know if there was lightning within 3 or 4 miles of their house on a certain date for various reasons. And I know that you can purchase this data. What's your best advice for somebody like that? Again, not a professional, just an average person that might not have a big budget for lightning data.
Yeah, there are lightning reports out there that take our data and they turn it into a lightning report. And you can search by your latitude and longitude and pick up to 14 days of data. Those are called StrikeNet reports. And anybody can go through and create one of those reports. Put in your latitude, longitude, or your address, your date, and if you want to go from 1 day, 3 days, 14 days, and you can get that information. Just takes about a minute or two for you to get that once you put in all the information.
And your credit card.
Is there a certain site for that?
Yeah, you can. You can search for StrikeNet, STRIKE net, and that's put together by CoreLogic.
Okay. So my other random comment here, the closest encounter in my life with a lightning strike came during a stinking tropical system. And I've always thought warm core tropical systems not going to have a lot of lightning. So J.B. Elliott, the late, great J.B. Elliott and James Spann, these two buffoons were on Red Mountain, Birmingham, Bill. This was during Hurricane Opal in 1995. And lightning hit that big WBRC sign up on the mountain. And we had the hair coming up, in our arms. And of course, we had no hair in our head, but man, the air was coming up. And it scared me half to death. The lightning in tropical systems, what's the story there, guys? Trust me, I know it happens.
Chris is one of the world experts on this.
It does. That's maybe giving me a little too much credit, Ron. But thank you.
I know something anyway.
It does happen. Typically you'll see it more frequently in these sheared storms or storms that are approaching landfall. But with that, you can kind of get some of the charge separation a little easier. You get dry air ingestion, and the dynamics just work better for lightning production. But even in some of these really big, mean, nasty storms, so your Hurricane Dorians, your Hurricane Michaels, for my master's work, I identified and defined what I've termed the eel signature. So enveloped eye wall lightning, which is when you just have lightning, just a ring of thunderstorms wrapping right around that eye wall. And I wouldn't say it's extremely common, but you see it more frequently in these really big, nasty storms. So the things that are Category 4s, Category 5, your Patricias, Dorians, Typhoon Haiyan, different things, storms like that, where, I mean, whether it's just, the tangential velocity is going so fast you get some upward motion, or, there's some other dynamics at play there. You get, just a ring of thunderstorms in that eye wall for 12, 24, 36 hours. So that is something unique that we've been able to see with our global lightning detection network, which sees lightning 360 degrees around the Earth, even at the North Pole. So,
and along those same lines, what do you guys think about the lightning mapper from the weather satellites? What are your thoughts?
It is actually been helpful for us. Ron had talked earlier about this continuing current lightning. So if you look outside and you see a flash of lightning out there, and it flickers, we call each of those flickers a lightning stroke. And lightning flashes are made up of these strokes. These strokes last for just microseconds at a time, but sometimes when you're looking out there, you see one that's lit up for a lot longer. It's only lit up for milliseconds, 10, 15, 20 milliseconds, but when you compare that to just a microsecond, it's lit up for a lot longer, and it's transferring heat and electricity for a lot longer. And those ones have the potential to trigger wildfires, cause substantial damage and things like that. What GLM has done is it's taking a picture of the light that's being transmitted by that lightning, and we're able to tell how long each of those events lasted. So was it just a few microseconds, or was it these 10, 20, 30 millisecond events? And we can then, using our ground-based network, say if it was cloud to ground or in cloud. And those cloud to ground that have the really long lasting times, we can pinpoint those as being the continuing current, and therefore the ones that you would want to direct your resources to check for damage, or to potentially put out a fire before it grows to 1,000, 2,000 acres.
And talk about bolts from the blue for a second. Because these things are sort of the things of legend, but now we're beginning to learn a lot more about them, and they're scary.
Ron, you want to take this one?
Yeah, this Frankie Lucena in Puerto Rico has a famous picture that I actually reconnected with him just a couple of weeks ago. Just look him up. He has this fantastic picture of lightning coming out sideways and coming down. Apparently the charge structure in the cloud like that is blocking the cloud to ground coming from the cloud to the ground. And so it's going around sort of an envelope or a pocket of charge, which is inhibiting it from coming to the ground. So in the worst case, it can go out 3 to 5 to 7 miles, even 10 miles horizontally from the middle of the cloud, and then come straight down. And that's tough. Those are really tough situations to handle. And we have some pictures. Frankie has one of the best ones of it.
And those strikes are just as dangerous as any other lightning strike, right?
Perfectly normal lightning, except that they came outside of the cloud where you might perceive your danger to be there from rain or from being cloudy or something like that. So, yeah.
And Chris, you've done some research and presentations recently on the threat to the explosives industry from lightning. Talk about that for a second.
Yeah. So this was over 100 years ago now that a munitions depot in New Jersey was struck by lightning, and you had this massive explosion. And lightning safety is critical for these organizations. And as I said earlier, with the space ranges, you don't want to be sitting on top of a giant. Is why the SpaceX Launch America was scrubbed for its first attempt earlier this year. So sometimes these people have maybe even a wider warning ring than that 8 miles that we had talked about earlier, because you have people that are handling high explosives. So again, having the information of where the lightning is at all times, so that you can wrap up whatever you're working on and get to your safe place is especially important for the explosives industry.
And we've been talking a lot tonight about detection and, when things happen within an 8-mile radius or, seeing when storms are propagating toward our area. But as Bruce Jones pointed out in the chat, a substantial percentage of human beings are struck by the first, strike from a storm. So how far away are we from, being able to issue lightning alerts or lightning warnings? And are you guys doing anything like that anytime in the near future?
Well, the ratio I don't think is real high. I've looked at quite a few cases, and other people have looked at quite a few cases. It kind of depends on how you define things. Nevertheless, it's a real problem. Kennedy Space Center has the most sophisticated lightning detection and protection system in the world. It's the only one that I think we can actually guarantee that there will never, ever be an unexpected lightning event strike something on the Cape. And what do they have? They have 22 electric field mills, which are very difficult to maintain. They have a 3-dimensional LMA type lightning mapping array. They have 2 lightning detection systems from VISA, a local one and a regional one. They also tap into the national one. And they have a forecasting team which is on site 24/7 doing nothing but lightning forecasting. So it's really not practical for almost anybody else to put in this sort of thing. I think they've estimated it's a couple $2 million a year to run this operation. But of course, the savings are worthwhile. So there is always a danger that one of these events will happen where you just simply cannot anticipate every possibility, because lightning really is somewhat random within a storm, and there's a lot going on. It's difficult with one simple measurement to keep track of everything.
Talking about NASA, you guys familiar with Apollo 12 and the story there?
Yeah.
This was probably before you guys were born, 1969. 69, Apollo 12, as the big Saturn V was going up, it was hit by lightning, and all the instrumentation just went blank, and nobody knew what to do. And they were going to abort that mission. Let me tell you what, aborting a mission, that's scary in itself. That's, very dangerous, just fraught with danger. But there was a flight controller by the name of John Aaron, and he radioed up to the guys. He said, take the SCE to aux, little switch, signal condition electronics to auxiliary. Nobody ever heard of the switch, but he saw it. He saw that same pattern happen of random data, and it was all garbled. And anyway, they threw the little switch, the data came back, and they kept the mission going. But that was in 69. And I would assume back in the 60s, lightning detection was not quite where we are today.
Well, what happens was that actually is one of the seeds of the lightning detection technology that was developed at the University of Arizona. Phil Kreider, Martin Heumann, and a couple other people there were called in on that. I actually heard about this recently, and were called in, and they said, you know what, we got a lot of work to do. And it was in the mid-70s when they first came up with the lightning detection, and they were one of the first customers. So that was actually one of the seed problems that started lightning detection as we know it. So yeah, there's a continuity going back to that.
Yeah, in fact,
John,
here it.
I was going to say, and John Aaron is the reason that we have, and he is the original steely-eyed missile man.
You're right. Every time we have a major malfunction here in the weather office, I always say, well, take the SCE to aux. I mean, that it worked for these guys in 1969. Maybe it's going to work for us. And of course, they give me that deer in the headlights look. But, that call by John Aaron had to be one of the greatest calls in mission control history. And that's just remarkable. And those guys in the 60s were mostly 20-something guys that were smart as could be, but they didn't know any better. They got man on the moon with slide rules and, these just crude computing systems. Our phones have more computing power than they did back then. And it's just an incredible thing. All right. So guys, we got to wrap this up. Thank you all for being over. You've been with us for more than an hour. How do you get in touch with you guys? Chris and Ron, somebody wants to send you an email or hit you up on a Twitter, Facebook. What's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, easiest way to get in touch with me is Twitter, at CO Weatherman, at Colorado Weatherman. Ron, if you want to give some way to get in touch.
Ron.Holly@Visola.com. Nothing complicated. And yeah, Chris put up on the chat the little booklet that we did. I have it in Chinese if you need it. I have it in Spanish. So anyway, I think for you, Jennifer, this might be just what you're looking for. It's kind of fun. Actually, I can't take credit for the format. The format is pretty funky, and it was done by a graphics designer here in Tucson, and she just went crazy with it. So it was a lot of fun. So.
Thank you. It's awesome.
And we'll put a link on the website, weatherbrains.com, in the show notes, so you'll have that. So we have to pause for a couple of segments here. We're going to hear from Tony Rice, and we're going to hear from Jen, and we will come back with the weather roundup, picks of the week, the email inbox, and much, much more as WeatherBrains rolls along.
I'm going to go have dinner.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your Astronomy Outlook.
More than 50 million Americans have already cast their ballots in the 2020 election. For some, early voting is a quick trip to the mailbox. For others, it's a drive beyond their normal polling place to an early voting site. But for NASA astronaut Kate Rubins, she cast her early vote from space, 250 miles up, just as she'd done before from the International Space Station back in 2016. Astronauts have been able to vote from space since 1997, when then Texas Governor George W. Bush signed a bill enabling it into law. The whole process pretty much boils down to an encrypted email, but since this involves federal, state, and local governments, there's a bit more to it. Once an astronaut knows that they'll be off-planet during both early voting and election day, they begin the process by filling out the same federal postcard application that members of the military and their families serving outside the United States do. The emails are encrypted with keys that are known only to the astronaut and the county clerk tasked with receiving the ballot and recording it, usually in Harris County, Texas, where most astronauts live. The law states that NASA comes up with this process, the Texas Secretary of State approves it, and before each ballot is even sent to the astronaut, the whole process is tested each time. Astronauts still must have their votes returned to the clerk by 7 p.m. local time on Election Day. Elsewhere in the sky, the moon turns full on Saturday, Halloween. A full moon falls on Halloween on average a bit less than every 19 years. This won't happen again in the Eastern Time Zone until 2039, but it hasn't happened there since 1955. That's your Astronomy Outlook. Follow me at RTP Hokie for more spacey stuff like this.
This week in tornado history, October 26, 1941. For Thomas Grzoulis, insignificant tornadoes, an estimated F4 tornado crossed approximately 10 miles, striking the southern part of Hamburg, Arkansas. Close to 53 homes were destroyed, and some of those leveled homes were, quote, the best in town. Sadly, 15 people were killed and 75 were injured. Doctors converted a hotel into an emergency hospital. 20 soldiers of the 127th Infantry 32nd Division were returning to Camp Livingston after a 15-day furlough in Michigan. Their chartered bus rolled into Hamburg just after the tornado hit. The soldiers ordered the bus to stop so they could help. Per an article from the Herald Press in St. Joseph, Michigan from October 30th, 1941, the soldiers sent out details searching for the injured. They posted general police and guard details around the hardest hit areas of town, and they guided traffic through the area and kept people away from 3 large gasoline tanks at an oil company that were leaking gas. After helping, they resumed their trip and arrived 24 hours late. Instead of being punished for being AWOL, the soldiers were cited for official commendation from their commanding officer. Check out all of our tornado summaries at tornadotalk.com and follow us on social media on Twitter and Facebook.
Great stories tonight from you, Jen, and from Tony Rice. Always fantastic recorded segments. But last 14 weeks, we've been privileged to have Bruce Jones join us from Midland. And we didn't get to say goodbye last week, Bruce, since we're coming to the end of our sponsorship here. So I had to have you back tonight to have an official goodbye. But we've really appreciated having you on here the last 3 months, Bruce.
Well, maybe we'll come on again in December for talk about Christmas gift giving, because I think weather radios make great gifts. What gift can you give somebody that's going to save their life? But weather radio. And then I'll be back with you guys next spring too, because I don't know. We may have an active tornado season. We have another hurricane on the way, and we've got a couple of new hurricane-based products from the National Weather Service: the Storm Surge Watch and the Storm Surge Warning. Now, if you have an older model weather radio, those new products will come across. It'll say unrecognized watch or unrecognized message or something. It's titled unrecognized, because they built into SAME, they built these flexibility to add in new alerts and new warnings. So on the older radios, you'll receive a storm surge warning. It'll set off the alert tone. You'll get the information. It'll talk to you, but in the display, it'll just say unrecognized. We have now burned our new computer chips, and all of the new radios that we're producing now, starting maybe 4 months ago, they all say now storm surge watch, storm surge warning, and snow squall warning. So the NOAA Weather Radio Network has the ability to be updated and improved all the time. I keep telling the folks out in California, these devices have been capable of broadcasting an earthquake warning, an EQW, for more than 20 years now. EQW is burned into the chips in these things. So all we need is US Geological Survey to send their new shake alerts on the NOAA Weather Radio, and then your weather radios in California, Oregon, Washington, Alaska would also give out your earthquake warnings, which might give you, a couple of seconds to dive underneath the desk and take shelter before the big shake starts arriving. So NOAA Weather Radio is designed to be a stable platform, and it has been for the last 50 or 60 years. Still works very well. The radio transmitters send their signals out a long distance. It's very reliable, but it's also constantly being improved. And the new Storm Surge Watch, Storm Surge Warning, and Snow Squall Warnings are the three newest products that are now being burned into the chips on weather radios of all manufacturers.
And one day there'll be some lightning warnings probably of some type, or you never know. We've been talking a lot about lightning tonight, but I learned a lot tonight about lightning. I just learned something from you, Bruce. So that was, we've been learning a lot, that weather radio, stays up with the times and is very flexible, but you've laid some knowledge on us every week the last 14 weeks for sure.
Well, wait till you see my pick of the week. But in the meantime, those of you who listen to this show, or if you watch it, I know that you're into the weather already, and we appreciate that. And some of you are professional meteorologists, and some of you just have an interest in weather, as a lot of people do. It's kind of a natural born thing for lots of folks, especially in the United States where we get so much severe weather. What I would like to ask you to do is to help the National Weather Service by promoting their NOAA Weather Radio Network. It really works very, very well. It's a very stable system. It's got a great track record. It's a wonderful thing to have. And so, I got Christmas coming up and yada, yada, and maybe you don't have a weather radio for yourself. So if you go to midlandusa.com and use the promo code SPAN15, that's SPANN, SPAN with 2 N's, and the number 15, you'll get 15% off on purchase of a weather radio. And, it's a good thing to have. If you give speeches on weather, if you talk to the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts, the Cub Scouts about weather, take along a weather radio. If you teach weather classes on the university level or the high school level, have a weather radio and talk about that. It's amazing to me how many people don't know about the NOAA Weather Radio Network, but it's operated by all of our 122 WFOs across the nation and in our territories overseas. And it's a great system. It works very, very well. And year after year, it saves lives. And I just talked today with the Emergency Management Department of Hamilton County, Tennessee, Chattanooga. And after what they went through on Easter Sunday, they're ready to do a big weather radio push there around Chattanooga, and God bless them. We'll be happy to help them.
Well, Bruce, if there are any other emergency managers or TV meteorologists around the country that want to reach out to you to do that same thing, how would they get in touch with you?
You can just get in touch with me. My email is bjones@midlandradio.com. I'm happy to help you. And, hey, I tell people, look, if you've got outdoor sirens, don't necessarily cut them down. I mean, they got their place for outdoor warnings, But for indoor warnings, use an indoor tornado siren, and that's exactly what NOAA Weather Radio was designed to be. It's an indoor tornado siren, and when it goes off, not only does it alert you with a tone, but it also tells you why it went off. And that may be the biggest difference between the indoor tornado siren and the outdoor. The outdoor might get your attention, but you wonder why. And the indoor tornado siren, NOAA Weather Radio, when it goes off, it'll tell you.
And again, we want you to be our evangelist, to help us spread the word that everybody needs one. A lot of people do, but a lot of people don't. In fact, I am shocked at how many people have a smoke alarm. They change the batteries. Ooh, we got the time change coming up. We're going back on standard time. I'm going to change my smoke alarm batteries. Well, what about your weather radio? And so please encourage your friends and neighbors and people you know to get one. And if you do have one, Bruce, maybe they should consider changing the battery this weekend, huh? Not a
Yeah,
bad idea.
Thanks for mentioning that, James. So we like to remind people once a year on your NOAA Weather Radio, put fresh batteries in it. And remember, you keep it plugged into the wall, but the batteries are there in case the power fails. I just was communicating today with Marin County, California Emergency Management. Their county is without power today because PG&E is cutting off the power to try to stop the wildfires from igniting. So when the power gets cut off, that's the time the battery backup comes in and saves your life.
Yep. So again, just spread the word, and that will be good for all of us. All right. So we have another hurricane in the Caribbean. It's the year that never ends and the hurricane season that never ends. So Nate,
and I'm not playing your game. I'm not playing your game where we pick where it's going to go, because I picked it and then it went there, and now I'm not welcome in the state of Louisiana.
No, you're not. You've been banned from travel to Louisiana for life.
Bob Perio has just said I'm not allowed to come down there and have crawfish anymore, and I'm sad about that.
Yep.
So,
but
no
Nate knew
game.
exactly where this was going before I even started the conversation. But I think at this phase of the game, it's pretty obvious that this will come up into southeast Louisiana, coastal Mississippi, then the remnant circulation through Alabama later this week. But at least the one good thing about these late season systems, once they get up in the westerlies, they start flying. The question I have is, what's this thing going to do when it gets off of Cape Cod up there? I have not really looked at that, but this might be kind of a big old bag of wind and mess for our friends up in the New England coastal area. So that'll be a story as well.
They might even be able to have some thunder snow that's triggered by towers sticking up into electrified clouds. Right, Chris? That never happened.
Oh, I've never seen that.
And by never, you mean like every time.
Oh, I posted a blog earlier this year when one of the radio antennas east of Denver got struck about 300 times during the blizzard.
Wow. But anyway, so we're in terms of the weather roundup down here in the deep south, we're dealing with that. But again, the rain amounts probably not that excessive because of the acceleration of the system. But as always, the hard part is the intensity at the time of landfall, because in theory, the water temperatures have come down a good bit, and the northern Gulf winds aloft will really increase. It ought to, weaken, but we all know that sometimes hurricanes don't do what you think they're going to do. So I think as a course of least regret, which is the right thing to do, the Hurricane Center's issued a hurricane watch from Morgan City to the Alabama-Mississippi state line, then a tropical storm watch for the Alabama Gulf Coast and over to the Walton-Okaloosa County line. And we'll just see how this whole thing plays out. And I don't think we're done. Come on now. We got a whole month left here. And, in 2005, we had tropical systems into December, didn't we? So we'll see what the rest of the season can crank up. But all day today, hey, man, we're out of letters in the Greek alphabet. Yeah. What are we going to do? What are we going to do now,
Google.
man?
We're at Z.
Use Google and search Greek alphabet.
It's alphabetical order in Greek.
Alpha and Omega. Just remember that.
Yes. So we've got 18 more left. I think we're going to be okay.
Yeah.
Kim is obviously with new child, and she's
And
out
iced
here
in
for a few
tonight.
But to say, I would love to have her on the show to talk about what's happening up there in Oklahoma, because they have had icing issues, and I've seen some images on the Twitter. They've had some pretty good icing. I think they've got power outages out there, don't they? In parts of Oklahoma.
I imagine them not, especially with all the leaves still on the trees.
I've been in one of those Oklahoma ice storms before, and it's just nasty.
Yeah, and Chris, out in your territory, you the cold air is deep, and you've had the snow.
I got darn near a foot.
Whew.
Wow.
So did anybody watch the Denver Kansas City football game yesterday?
It's the way football games should be played, in a blinding snowstorm.
Yeah, I've been to Coors Field in the summer. Never been to Mile High Stadium in October or the winter. I'd love to do that sometime, but that was a hoot. But it has been really cold. I mean, I saw Salt Lake City had a record low maximum today, and a bunch of spots hit below zero in parts of Wyoming and Montana with this thing. So it's a pretty impressive chunk of cold air for so early in the season. And Troy, you're freezing down there, man. Are you going to survive this cold wave? You're 44.
Yeah, about actually down to 43 now since we started the show. So, I mean, it's impressive when you consider that we were 80 at noon today. So quite the cold front as it came through. Now an overrunning pattern that basically will persist. A little while ago, guys, Chris noticed in the lightning data I'm looking at that we were getting a lightning strike. We had a couple of lightning strikes in storms southwest of Tulsa. I saw it in their weather their ASOS, actually, the observers carried lightning with a temperature of 33. So we saw that earlier in Oklahoma City as well. So
one of those good Oklahoma ice storms. I woke up at 2-3 in the morning, and the Oklahoma Mesonet was reading about 27 degrees, and I was hearing constant thunder and lightning.
Yeah.
So it's
so that begs for somebody
for
to ask. That begs for somebody to ask the question, Chris. What's the coldest temperature that you've noted with thunder and lightning?
It's about that 25, 26 degrees, but.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know if I've seen it any colder than that, but you got once you go much colder than that, and you get instability aloft, which you would need for lightning to form, you're getting beyond that threshold that you want for lightning to develop.
The blizzard of '93, Bill Murray, remember that one? We had some. Everybody brags on thunder snow, but we had down here in the deep South, we had some pretty good thunder with that thing, Chris. That was shaking and baking. And this was in March of '93. And I want to say it was probably 28 to 32 when this was happening. So it was, but for the deep South, that's pretty cold for that stuff. So
at one point, and talking about temperature contrasts and whatnot, at one point today, about 3 o'clock, we had temperatures below 0 Fahrenheit near Dalhart, Texas, and 100 in deep South Texas. So 100-degree temperature spread across the Republic today. That's legit. That's good
awesome
stuff.
Yeah, it's a weather weenies festival today across the country.
That's my pick of the week, by the way. So
did you see the tweet from Great Falls that they beat their record low by 31 degrees?
Ooh.
Oh,
wow. Whew, goodness gracious. All right. Well, let me do my pick here, and I'm going to let Bill pick it up for somebody because I've got to get put on some professional TV clothes here, and I'm the lead back in Studio A. So did you guys see the Paul Smith photo of the jellyfish Sprite late last week?
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh man. That's my pick of the week. I mean, he caught this huge red jellyfish Sprite. I want to say it was Friday near the Oklahoma-Texas line with a green ghost afterglow. And again, I linked over to our show where Paul came on the line here. But anyway, that's my pick of the week. So Bill Murray, you pick it up and you wrap it up here. I got to go do some television.
Yeah, thanks, James. Jen Nairmore, I bet you got a pick of the week for us.
I do. back in August, Beirut, Lebanon had a horrific explosion and over 200 people were killed. And just a couple of days ago, there was video of a water spout that came on shore right over that blast site. And there was some video of it. And so folks, I have the tweet of at least one of the videos that came through. It was just a 2020 thing to happen, I think.
Mother Nature is not very good with the 1, 2, 3 punches this year.
No, you got that right.
Oh my goodness. Well, that's an interesting one though, Jen. Thank you for sharing that. Troy Kimmel, I bet you got a pick of the week.
I do, and I continue to work as Daryl Hertzman's contact and publicity person up at Iowa.
Are you about to give me another time sync?
No,
Is that
no,
what
I'm
it's gonna be?
I'm fixing to give you. One thing that's interesting, Bill, for people like Nate and folks that we do that may be looking for historic METAR data, it's getting harder and harder to really dig and find it in a raw form on the internet. And in the last couple of weeks, been working with Daryl, seeing if there's something we can do through a direct link instead of through a set page of being able to do this. And it's about 2 weeks old now, but I've sent you 4 sets of new websites that Daryl has set up, very raw METAR data. And I'll tell you, by adjusting the hours in these links you're going to see, I'm going back to METAR data back in 2019. So over a year's worth of data at least, and knowing Daryl, he'll go back and gather data beyond that. In addition, there's some leading metadata for data over a month old, which becomes very difficult to figure out what day it is because you can't tell by the way the METAR is set up. And he's done a link where we incorporate 5-minute data into that as well. Very clean page and able to cut and paste. And again, Daryl Hertzman working really hard at the Iowa Environmental Mesonet. And I'll tell you, we're working on something else too today, which I'll tell you about later.
He's a magician, and
he is.
You're a great publicity agent, Troy. Thank you for that. Aubrey, what you got for us?
So I am part of the Mid-Atlantic Chaser Con, which obviously we were not able to hold in person this year. So we're doing 1-hour Saturday sessions. We had our first one last Saturday with Dr. Jeff Halverson talking about deratios. So my pick of the week is the YouTube link for that. And also coming up this Saturday, we're remembering the April 16th, 2011 tornado outbreak across Virginia and North Carolina. April 27th, 28th gets a lot of the attention, but about a week and a half earlier, there was a significant tornado outbreak between Virginia and North Carolina. So we've got National Weather Service that's going to be talking about that. In fact, April 16th, 2011 was my first tornado warning on air.
Wow. And we've got a couple special shows coming up next April.
I'm sure we're going to be talking about it a lot. Yeah, excited to see
the deep south end of it and then kind of going up towards your area a little bit, Aubrey. So thank you for that. Bruce, you've always got a great pick of the week, and you say this one is especially special tonight, huh?
Oh, yeah, I do. So, the Chicxulub meteorite that hit in the Yucatan is generally regarded as what wiped out the dinosaurs. There were other things going on with them, but that was the death knell. And it ended up wiping out 99% of the life on this planet. And it left what's called the KT boundary, the Cretaceous Tertiary boundary, in the soils and the rocks all over the planet. Well, up in parts of Montana, South Dakota, and North Dakota, there's the Hells Creek Formation. And this is a little vial of the microtectites that were raining out of the sky about 6 to 10 minutes after that meteorite struck. These things were blasted up into the stratosphere and were falling white hot with a terminal velocity of about 100 to 200 miles an hour. And this was the stuff that was falling down. Here's a picture of what that looks like when you enlarge it under a microscope. This was the stuff that was falling from the sky 6 to 10 minutes after the giant asteroid struck, blasted a hole 100 miles across and 12 miles deep. And all this rock went up into the stratosphere and then started raining down in a white hot precipitation that started forest fires and killed literally everything that got hit by it. So it's probably the craziest precipitation that's ever fallen on planet Earth. And this little vial, you can buy these. They're like $15 for this little vial, but it's something great to have on your shelf because this was falling the day the dinosaurs died.
And now you've given 2020 one last finale that it can squeeze in to make Greg Carbon's list here before it's over with for the year. Thanks, Bruce. Bruce, we thank you for your sponsorship and your friendship and just being here.
You bet. Glad to be
It's
here.
been awesome having you every week. Can't wait for you to be back. So
Will do.
hurry and make that happen.
Yeah.
So, awesome. Chris, I'm saving you for last. I know you got a great pick of the week for us.
Oh, yeah, we've had some meteorology, we've had some astronomy. How about some volcanology? I'm going to send you to the Smithsonian Global Volcanism Program, something we didn't get to talk about tonight, volcanic lightning. There are some volcanoes that have had reports written recently, including some of our lightning data. So I challenge you to find some of those volcanoes that have had pretty impressive displays of volcanic lightning in the past few years.
Outstanding. Well, we really appreciate you being here tonight, Chris. It's been a great show. Aubrey, I'd say this was pound for pound one of the biggest knowledge lay-ons we've ever had on this show.
No, and I missed part of it at the end because I had to go on TV, so I'm going to have to go back and listen to it. But Chris, really excited to have you on, and yeah, so it's just an exciting show, and maybe we'll have to have Chris back to talk about that volcanic lightning. Sounds interesting.
Yeah, and talk about how Weissel is their observational data is helping make better bread too. I want to know a little more about that too, Chris.
Oh yeah, we've got all sorts of good stuff. You know, even the Mona Lisa is being monitored by our sensors.
Wow, full of fun facts tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there you go. We just keep packing them in here. Well, Chris, thank you so much for being here tonight. We appreciate
Well, thanks for having me and Ron, and always glad to come back if you want to learn more.
Well, you got a standing invite. You ever got something to talk about, you're welcome back anytime. So Nate had to run, but I know he's getting Nick Underwood for next week to join us, and we've already got Beth Carpenter and JT Cooper joining us, the Indiana Chaser Con. They're going to be with us, so that's going to be a fun show. James Morrow from the National Weather Service in Blacksburg on the 9th. And then we just got great shows coming up all through the end of November into December. Greg Carbon will be joining us on the 28th. And then I got a dental cleaning on the 25th. I don't think that's supposed to be in the schedule, but so that's not part of the show notes. But anyway, WeatherBrains is the weekly netcast that's all about weather, and we do this show on Monday nights whenever James is not forcing us into some other weird night because of vacation or holiday schedules. But we always have some of the greatest minds in weather and meteorology with us, as we exhibited here tonight. But until we talk to you next Monday night right here at this same time and same bat channel. I guess it'll be in a different time element, though, because we'll be on standard time at this time next week. I'm Bill Murray for the whole WeatherBrains crew. And as I always tell you, keep an eye to the sky because you'll always have something fun to look at. Thank y'all for a fun show.
Good show.
Bye, everybody.
Take care.
Bye.
Thanks, Chris.
See y'all.
Thanks, guys.
Well, I was about to walk out the door in the studio and noticed that they just wrapped the same things up here. So anyway, great discussion tonight. All things lightning. Wow. Thanks to Chris and Ron for being on the show, and got some great answers to some good questions. And yeah, I'm in my TV duds now, so we can go do some television weather here. So a tropical system always means a lot more graphical stuff I have to do over there. So anyway, got to run. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next Monday night at 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock Eastern, back on Monday nights until probably the end of December. So we'll see you